Welcome to Committee Representative Kraft. Would you like to move your bill?
Would. Thank you, Madam Chair. I move that House File 2493 be laid over for possible inclusion.
Great, and I believe you have an author or a DE1?
I do have a DE1, which I would move the DE1, and that doesn't change the substance of the bill, but it makes some technical corrections to the language. It gets in the form that I want to be considered.
Okay, any discussion to the DE1? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion prevails and the DE is adopted. So Representative, please tell us about House File 2493 as amended.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I'm happy to be carrying House File 2493 that creates a supplemental grant program to reduce energy burden for low-income households in Minnesota. Energy burden is the percentage of gross household income spent on energy costs. According to the U.S. Department of Energy, the national average energy burden for low-income households is 8.6%, 3 times higher than for non-low-income households, which is estimated at 3%. In Minnesota, it's a problem everywhere, but even more so in greater Minnesota, where almost 1 in 3 counties has an average energy burden of 5% or higher. So there's 2 main reasons I'm excited about this bill. The primary one is that it uses some of our surplus to help lower income households deal with energy burden, because no one should have to choose between heating or cooling their home and providing for their family. And second, the program has a nice tie-in with our weatherization program, and that the same application form is used. So there's the potential of providing both immediate assistance and weatherization to reduce energy usage and costs longer term. So mechanically, the bill provides funding to supplement the Low-Income Home Energy Assistance Program, or LIHEAP, from the federal government. During the pandemic, states received supplemental LIHEAP assistance. This has now ended, but the need is not. And a letter from the organizations that locally administer the program emphasizes the continuing need among the elderly, disabled, and families with children at home. This bill increases the income threshold of the program from 50% of state median income to 60%, and it makes the program available year-round as opposed to just during winter months. It's emphasizing to try to reach more families, not necessarily increasing amounts to households already receiving grants. The funding that we're asking for is a $100 million one-time appropriation to be spread over 5 years that can support an additional 18,000 households per year. And at this point, my partner in this bill is I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Falk from the Citizens Utility Board.
Great. Welcome to committee, Ms. Falk, Levinson Falk. Would you introduce yourself and proceed?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and good afternoon, members. I'm Annie Levinson Falk, Executive Director of the Citizens Utility Board of Minnesota, a nonprofit consumer advocate for Minnesota utility consumers. We brought forward this bill, as Representative Kraft said, to respond to the serious issues that Minnesotans have been facing related to the cost of energy. The bill provides a one-time appropriation of state funding to supplement the funding that's received every year from the federal government through the Energy Assistance Program, or LIHEAP, to allow the program to serve more families and to stay open through the summer months. At CUB, it's really difficult when somebody calls us in June because their utility service is about to be shut off, and we have to tell them that there's no assistance available. Sometimes people, didn't apply during the winter months because they weren't aware of the program, or we talk with people who thought their application was good to go and then found out too late that there was a paperwork error because it's a pretty complicated application. So we usually tell people at that point, talk to your family, see if there are local houses of worship or food banks or charities like that that might be able to help you out. And when they've exhausted those options, then the conversation shifts to something more like, well, you need, it might be time to think about where else you can stay. And for renters, that can often mean losing their housing on a permanent basis. As you're well aware, fuel prices have been elevated for everyone, and the costs have especially been felt by people who use heating oil. If anyone here drives a diesel vehicle, you're aware that those costs, they've come down some, but they remain quite high. And even under normal economic circumstances, energy costs are higher in rural areas and on tribal nations. Minnesotans are feeling these costs. Residential customers owe, on average, twice as much on their utility bills as they did at this time 4 years ago. The need is great, and the current energy assistance program, as helpful as it is, it's not keeping up. So this bill will help. It proposes to use a bit of the state supplement to send it back to families to help with those high energy costs. As Representative Kraft said, it provides assistance through an existing program, so there's no new administrative structures that need to be stood up. It would allow the program to be open through the summer to help with cooling costs or shut-off notices that folks are dealing with in the summer months. And it allows the program to consistently serve households up to 60% of state median. Usually the program, the federal funds are at 50%. That can vary from year to year, and that's just a confusion for folks that fall in that middle range. And as Representative Kraft said, energy assistance it's a kind of a Band-Aid. It helps people address an immediate need, but it also connects people with permanent solutions for affordability. So it connects them with weatherization assistance. It also opens up eligibility for utility affordability programs that can ensure that bills are a consistent portion of a household's income, and most Minnesotans are served by a utility that offers a program like that. We did learn today that there are some concerns with the administrative and outreach costs in the bill. This bill does propose outreach spending that could be up to 3% higher than under the federal funding, and that the intent there was to put an emphasis on reaching communities that are not being well served by the existing program. But learning that there are concerns with that, I think that's certainly something that we could address down the road. We're happy to talk about that and consider changes there. And I also just wanted to note, if members, if you're reading the DE, there is one section that has an error that will also need to be fixed. In the very last paragraph, that's section 2, paragraph B2, the intent is to say that outreach funds will prioritize organizations that can reach those underserved communities, but not that it would be limited to those organizations. Thank you for the opportunity to speak, and I'd be happy to address any questions at the appropriate time.
Thank you for your testimony. Let's see, we have a few others on the list. Next up is Lisa Drew. And after that, I guess Miss Rosa Top is next after that. So welcome to committee, Ms. Drew. Please introduce yourself for the committee and proceed with your testimony.
Thank you. My name is Lisa Drew, and I am the Community Development Director at TriCap, Tri-County Action Program. TriCap is the energy assistance provider in the central Minnesota counties of Benton, Sherburne, and Stearns County. In addition to those which are our primary service areas, we also provide the energy assistance program in Morrison County. Our administrative offices are located in Waite Park, and as I mentioned, for a number of our services, we go beyond our designated areas of Benton, Sherburne, and Stearns County. Across all of our programs, every year we serve between 13 and 15,000 families. And the urban, across our service area, the urban population makes up 60% and the rural makes up 40%. By age group, seniors 65 and over make up 40% of that rural population. As the energy assistance provider in Stearns, Benton, Sherburne, and Morrison County last year, we served 6,975 families. 40% of those were seniors age 65 and above. This year, we're finding that the grant sizes are smaller than last year, and the income eligibility is at 50% of the state median income instead of 60%, which is what it was last year. So what that means is, as of March 7th, the energy assistance grants that have been paid out in our service area this year are about $2.3 million. Last year, it was over $5 million at that same time. At this point in time, our crisis applications are up 20% over last year. And in some cases, the need for crisis assistance is happening at the same time as they're applying for their primary heat grant. And this is germane to my point about the rural population, because when we think about delivered fuels, with a minimum primary grant amount of $200, households and families aren't even able to get one fuel delivery without combining their primary grant with their crisis grant. And the crisis grant can go up to $1,500. This can make it very difficult for families trying to meet their basic needs. When we combine this increased cost in terms of heating, along with the other inflation and higher costs that these families are experiencing. TriCap supports House file from Representative Kraft, as we believe that it will provide additional funding to help assist people with their heating costs. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Drew. Next, we have Rosa Talk. Welcome to committee. Please state your name for the record after you do.
Buenas tardes, good afternoon, Chair Alcom and members of the committee. For the record, my name is Rosa Talk, and I am the Executive Director of the Minnesota Council on Latino Affairs. The Council is a state agency in the executive branch tasked to advise on policy and legislation that pertains and is beneficial to Latino Minnesotans. I am here to testify in strong support of this bill. During the Council listening sessions in the community last year, in preparation for this legislative session, we heard many stories from youth and their families about real financial hardships that they are still experiencing, and many of these difficulties are a result of still recovering from the pandemic crisis and from the rise of prices of food and other basic services. As we know, fuel and the natural gas prices remain volatile, and this bill will help low-income families with the current costs of energy, not only during the fall and winter, but as the Representative Kraft indicated, also during the summer, especially nowadays when they tend to be much hotter, as we all have experienced lately. Also, qualifying for this program may allow someone to qualify for other assistance, for instance, to insulate their homes or replace their furnace. This bill puts focus on outreach to underserved communities and also will help to close racial disparities that we know affect our state and also all of our communities statewide. In the recent past, our council has partnered with the Department of Commerce to inform Latino households about the Energy Assistance Program. Should this bill be considered, the Council looks forward to supporting the department and other organizations with outreach to make sure that these services and programs go to more households, which is the intention of this bill. For these and many other reasons, which were raised by Representative Kraft and Annie and the previous testifier, I urge you to support and vote in favor of this proposal. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your testimony, Ms. Talk. And with that, we'll turn to member questions. Representative Igo.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Representative Kraft, for bringing this bill today. You know, I guess where I'll start digging in on it, and just so I can get some clarity on it, I was going through and just trying to read up how much of the $100 million that we're putting in here is going to actually be used to help people, and I added up that between all this other stuff, there's 10% to administer, another 2.5%, and then 8%. So if I do that correctly, is about over $20 million that's not even going to be used for assistance, so 20%.
And as I'm looking through, I think if you're looking in the appropriations, I'll maybe let the author of the bill, but I think the 2.5% might be part of the 10%. But in Representative Kraft.
Okay.
Madam Chair, Representative Igo, yes, that's 2.5% is part of the 10, so the total is 18.
Okay.
Representative Igo.
Thank you. And then, do you have any of the partners where you think this 8% for the unnamed organizations? The only reason I'm bringing it up, and this is the third time I've brought it up today, is, with the OLA doing so many reports into making sure we don't have money walk out the door and disappear here in the state of Minnesota, do we have any way of reporting this to know that this money is not going to get used fraudulently?
Representative Kraft.
Madam Chair, Representative Igo, I'm actually going to ask my Ms. Levinson Falk here to talk about the process that is in place.
Ms. Levinson Falk.
Sure. Thank you, Chair Acom and Representative Igo. This outreach and administration follows the same framework as is done with the federal funding. So I think probably some of those organizations, maybe many of them would be the same. And that's done through Department of Commerce. I'm sure that's reported on the federal level. But I think you make a good point that if there's something different going on, maybe there's some extra reporting that should be included in that.
Representative Igo. And but actually, is there reporting within the bill on 2.2?
220 to 222.
So, Representative Igo.
Is Department of Commerce here?
I believe they are.
There we go.
Welcome to committee. Mr. Kelly, please state your name for the record and proceed.
Hi, Madam Chair. For the record, I'm John Kelly. I'm the Director of Government Affairs for the Minnesota Department of Commerce.
So, thank you for coming up here real quick. So the question, in looking at the bill, there is reporting based on like household information, but I guess the reporting I'm looking for clarification on is that stated in the bill, the 8.5, up to 8%, excuse me, for the outreach to unnamed organizations and whatnot. So was that going to fall under your purview in the Department of Commerce?
Mr. Kelly.
Madam Chair, Representative Igo, yes. We work with 28 different service providers across the state, as well as utilities, to administer the low-income heating assistance program. And we would follow the same stringent requirements and everything else for the federal dollars as we would with state dollars if this program was to go into law.
Thank you for that, Mr. Kelly. Representative Igo.
No, thank you for following up with me on that. I really do appreciate it. I guess closing remarks to this, and I'll let someone else ask a question. This is a concern that I started raising over a year ago when we were talking about fuel prices being out of control. I had constituents this November who still have fuel oil in northern Minnesota over $5 a gallon for a fill-up. That's, if you have a 500-gallon tank, that's $2,500. It's good to see that we can do programs like this, but again, another way that we can offset this is actually investing in American energy and realizing that we're going to need carbon-based fuels to keep greater Minnesota warm, and that should be the other talking point of this bill. Thank you.
And with that, we're going to go on to the next. We've got 4 more questions, and we need to be done with this bill by 4 o'clock, so I just want us to be thoughtful. Representative Swazinski.
Madam Chair, just a general question too. Just from a verification, one of the testifiers talked about how they have to stack the emergency funding, and that it's my understanding this $100 million won't necessarily go to any folks that already qualify or in, but it actually expands the program up the income vein. Is that correct?
Representative Kraft.
Madam Chair, Representative Swazinski, part of this is aimed to expand, but it doesn't restrict that it can't go to folks that are getting it today. And Representative
Ms. Levinson Falk.
Ms. Levinson Falk might be able to comment.
Chair Acom and Representative Swazinski, I think probably the majority of people that would receive grants under this supplemental funding would qualify under the federal funds too. The federal funds only reach about 20-ish% of the families that would qualify, so there's still a lot more folks that aren't getting support from that.
Representative Swazinski.
So, Madam Chair, this doesn't it expands it a little bit, but mostly it'll just go to those same 20%.
Not
Levinson Falk.
Chair Acom and Representative Swazinski, it's prohibited from going to those same people. So if you receive a grant from the federal funding, you can't then get another grant from the state funding. And it even says in here that the priority is on reaching more households and not just increasing those grant amounts. It's to reach more. I think it would reach more of the folks that would fall under that, the same, the 50% from the federal, but not the same households.
And then, Madam Chair, is that, obviously this replaces income for folks. That do you have, as a taxpayer that receives these grants, do you report these as income when you do your income tax?
Representative Kraft or Ms. Levinson Falk?
No.
Chair Acom,
I
Representative,
don't know.
I don't know. I see Mr. Kelly shaking his head, but I don't know about the tax side.
So
Okay,
I can,
Come on
I think
back
Ms.
up,
I think Ms.
Mel.
Levinson Falk, Ms. Levinson Falk said the money went directly to the utilities. That's what I heard her say.
So, yes. But Madam Chair, I mean, this supplements, I mean, at the end of the day, this supplements income. So if you incur a bill as an individual, I think that's just maybe a failure of the tax code, that this should be tracked as, income replacement, because that's essentially what it's doing, because otherwise you would have to go out and make that money. If someone pays a bill on your behalf, like that's considered income in all other aspects of business. And I think, it seems like we should probably, that this maybe bill should, I mean, as a whole, be looked at from a perspective of maybe this should go to tax committee, because potentially this is something that we're not looking at, because we always consistently hear that, well, we have folks in lower income levels, but if you're receiving this consistently on a consistent basis, this could be thousands of dollars for an individual family, and that's not necessarily be reporting, but it should be as income.
Representative Kraft, did you want to?
yeah, Madam Chair, Representative Swedzinski, there's, I don't think this is treated any differently than the current program. I don't want to get in this bill to an examination of our tax structure with this kind of a program, but I think if you want to, so I would.
Next question to Representative Altendorf.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Representative Kraft. I just wanted to swing back and talk a little bit more about that $18 million. So even as well-intended as the program would be to obviously help people who are in need with their energy costs, that $18 million seems like an extraordinary amount of money when you look at a percentage basis. Even like if I'm donating to a charity, we're told that you want the majority of that going right to the people that need it, and you want to look for organizations that are using those dollars very carefully. And if you could just explain a little bit more, I think the Minnesota taxpayers would want to know, a little bit more detail on $18 million and why that would be a necessary percentage of this program.
Or Ms. Levinson Falk, did you want to respond, or?
I'll start.
Okay, Representative Kraft.
Madam Chair and Representative Altendorf, I think it's an excellent question, one that I'm asking as well. The federal guidelines on this program, with the nature of it, I think are in the 10 to 15% range. This has put a little bit more in there to try to do outreach and reach some folks that haven't been there, but I think, and Ms. Levinson Falk can comment as well, but I think, we're committed to go look at that and see if there are any other efficiencies we can find.
And Mr. Kelly.
So, Madam Chair, Representative, the current LIHEAP program, I don't think that we would disagree that it's a significant amount of administrative cost. That is not the department. Mostly it is the service providers that are using that admin percentage. For context, we spend as much as $10 million a year on the current program as admin. The state processes 150,000 applications, including 45,000 additional requests for crisis assistance, 5,000 emergency requests for energy-related repair replacement. We do all of that for $66 per applicant. So that's a lot of folks, and it sounds like a large amount of money, but it really breaks down to a low amount of money per application. It's labor intensive to connect with folks who are potentially either in a crisis, have never interacted with state government before, have language barriers, as Ms. Tock has described. And so last year, when we had a significant amount of additional federal resources from the ARPA program, we still had trouble reaching folks to connect with them, to give them this benefit, to connect them with this benefit when they were in crisis. And that we increased the amount, the AMI, when we had those additional funds to try to get that out the door. It's gone back down to get some benefit out there. But I know that the price, there is sticker shock, but it is because it's labor intensive, and we process a ton of these applications as a cold weather state.
Thank you for that context, Mr. Kelly.
Thank
Did
you.
have a final
Thank you. No,
follow-up?
thank you.
Oh, thank you. We've got two more people asking questions, so if it can be brief, please. Representative Garofalo.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And Madam Chair, I recognize that people look at that $100 million and they think that that's a lot of money, and it is. It's a lot of money. But it's important to note that Ms. Levinson Falk pointed out that this is for a 5-year window. So $20 million a year. This is an existing program. Second point is that this is for heating assistance, and so this is something that we have done in the past. We have provided supplemental appropriations. I speak specifically, I think, specifically to 2014 when Representative Radenovich carried supplemental funding for the LIHEAP program because of the propane funding crisis. But certainly as your purview as chair, you have the opportunity with lines 3.13 to 3.23 to make some modifications and adjustments to that. I think if you look at the 2014 bill and you look at the history of administering LIHEAP programs, you will find that this, every dollar that gets put into administration is one less dollar that's going to people who actually need the assistance. And I would really encourage you to give that a strong look and maybe, in addition to lowering those percentages, put some more aggressive reporting in there. There has been previously, we know of at least one group comes to mind that was actually federally indicted for corruption, and we want to make sure that there's going to be a lot of scrutiny of nonprofits going forward. I think it would be wise to have more reporting and lower dollar or lower percentage thresholds. So thank you.
Thank you for that, and I think there was some notice of interest in looking at that, and so I think that will happen, and the bill will be laid over, so I think there will be every opportunity for that. Last question, Representative Newton, before we turn it back to the author.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And Representative Garofalo got part of my question. The other part is I'm concerned, as I was yesterday, with people who own a lot of property being able to apply for these grants. And even though the resident of the home could be a renter, is below that poverty level or at the level, the money is actually going to benefit the person that owns the property. It's not the renter that benefits from it because the property value is going to go up. And I think it was the point that you were making yesterday on the amendment that you had. And I would like to see, if you're going to do this, that not more than one grant can be provided to any individual owning property. So if you got a large landlord, he can only benefit from that one time.
Thank you, Representative Newton. Ms. Levinson Falk, would you like to address that?
Sure, I can try to be brief. Thank you, Chair Acom and Representative Newton. I think if you have a landlord owning the property, they are not eligible to benefit from it. A renter could benefit if they have the utility bills in their own name, so that would be a renter's expense. And so like if I'm renting a property and I have a utility bill, if I don't pay it, that's on me. Even if I move, it doesn't transfer to the landlord. But other than that, the landlord wouldn't be able to benefit from this program.
But thank you. I don't want to belabor the point, but, generally speaking, the person who rents the house would have the utility bill in their name, and their income could be below that level. I just don't want to see someone I have some in my area who own 60, 70 homes and and most of them are lower income homes that could benefit from a program like this, personally benefit by having the value of their homes increased. So I just wanted to make that point.
I appreciate that, and I think that if the utility bills are in their name, they can benefit from that. Is that right, Ms. Levinson Falk? Or maybe I'm missing.
Chair Acom, this program doesn't make any, typically doesn't make improvements to the home itself. It in most cases just pays the utility bill. So if a renter owes an electric bill, it would just pay the bill. It wouldn't be a landlord benefit.
Great. Any final comments to our bill author, Representative Kraft?
Thank you, Madam Chair. The American Council for an Energy Efficient Economy researched energy burden in 2020 and actually found that high energy burdens are correlated with greater risk for respiratory diseases, increased stress, and economic hardship and difficulty in moving out of poverty. So this is an important and targeted program for households who really need the assistance, and thank you.
And with that, the bill is laid over.